Okay. Almost there. All right, I'm going to put our info in the description box. All right, so it's public. Okay. I am going to go live on Facebook. So we are recording on Zoom, but I'm going to hit the live button on Facebook. There will be a slight lag between Facebook and what we are experiencing, just so you guys know.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Hey everyone, I hope you are well. If you are seeing this live recording, we are going live now for amazing, the next 90 minutes or so for a poetry read to share with all of you. Thank you and welcome. Okay, here we are. This is so informal and ridiculous. Okay. Thank you everyone for joining us on Facebook today. We are doing a poetry live entitled Face in a Glass, which is taken from an Oscar Wilde poem, and I will read that to you guys here very soon. But I want to introduce my people that are with me today. So we have Cindy, who I have worked with for many years in the journalism field and is an incredible producer, writer, and a beautiful poet. Sydney Bollinger, who is my cousin and is also an incredible poet and has just graduated with her master's, yes. And then there is Amir, who is a fantastic yogic instructor and coach, and he is also great poet. So we are going to recite poems for you guys. We're going to talk. We're going to be laid back. If it's in the morning in the US for you, welcome. I hope you guys will grab some coffee or tea and join us. If you're in Europe, I know it might be a good lunch break. And if you are in Asia, grab a glass of wine and sit with us. So there it is. In the description of this live is ways that you can support each of us. We are all teachers and writers, and during this time, it is really helpful if you guys would find our pages, support our work, buy books, anything that you can. Those links are in the description box, and so you can check them out and donate or purchase or find on the web as you listen. So just want to hand the floor to the folks to all have a chance to say hi, and if there's anything you guys want to say about yourselves, please feel free to do so.
Hey, my name is Amir, and I'm very happy to be here and to really enjoy one of my first loves in life and one of my ongoing and continuing kind of passions and fascinations, which is to be inspired by poetry and to share poetry and to kind of get lost and found in beautiful, thoughtful notions and delicious wordplay. So I'm very grateful and very happy to be here.
I'm Cindy, and as I said, we've been friends for a long time, co-workers even longer. Just grateful for the opportunity.
And I'm Sydney. Like Ash said, I am a writer, and I just finished my master's program, so I was defending my thesis, which is a body of creative work about spirituality and the environment that I hope to turn into a book in the future.
Awesome. Okay, so the first thing I want to do is I want to introduce everyone to the title of our poetry reading, which is Face in a Glass, which comes from the very first page, the preface of Oscar Wilde's book, The Picture of Dorian Gray, which talks about sort of how art serves the world. So I'm going to start with that, and then each one of our poets is going to read some of their poetry. We'll talk about some of it, and yeah, just sit back and enjoy. All right, the picture of Dorian Gray. The artist is the creator of beautiful things. To reveal art and conceal the artist is art's aim. The critic is he who can translate into another manner or a new material his impression of beautiful things. The highest, as the lowest form of criticism, is a mode of autobiography. Those who find ugly meanings in beautiful things are corrupt without being charming. This is a fault. Those who find beautiful meanings in beautiful things are the cultivated. For these there is hope. They are the elect to whom beautiful things mean only beauty. There's no such thing as a moral or an immoral book. Books are well written or badly written. That is all. The 19th century dislike of realism is the rage of the Caliban seeing his own face in a glass. The 19th century dislike of romanticism is the rage of the Caliban not seeing his own face in a glass. The moral life of a man forms part of the subject matter of the artist, but the morality of art consists in the perfect use of an imperfect medium. No artist desires to prove anything, even things that are true and can be proved. No artist has ethical sympathies. An ethical sympathy in an artist is an unpardonable mannerism of style. No artist is ever morbid. The artist can express everything. Thought and language are the artist's instruments of an art. Vice and virtue are the artist's materials for the art. From the point of view of form, the type of all the arts is the art of the musician. From the point of view of feeling, the actor's craft is the type. All art is at once surface and symbol. Those who go beneath the surface do so at their peril. Those who read the symbol do so at their peril. It is the spectator and not the life that art really mirrors. Diversity of opinion about a work of art shows that the work is new, complex, vital. When critics disagree, the artist is in accord with himself. We can forgive a man for making a useful thing as long as he does not admire it. The only excuse for making a useless thing is that one admires it intensely. All art is quite useless.
Well, that's a hard act to follow.
I mean, it's Oscar Wilde, right?
Yeah, exactly. But I want to read a poem this morning that I wrote last night. And I told Ash I had a tough time sleeping last night because of, if you haven't heard of this case in Georgia, Black man was killed.
Hold on, Cindy. It says our live recording stopped, so I want to make sure that we're actually on.
Right.
We're still recording. I'm so sorry. I think that we might have to do it again. Live on Facebook. Yeah, it seems to have just stopped suddenly. I have no idea why. Forgive me.
Okay.
Technical problems. We're gonna do it again. I'm not sure what would have stopped it. So you guys will have to like re-share.
Okay.
Forgive me, but don't worry about it. I'll share on your page while you're reading, Cindy. I'll share it to your page. Huh.
Okay.
Okay, looks like we're up now. It looks like we're up.
So I was just saying, I'm Cindy, and this is a poem that I just wanted to read out the gate because it's weighed heavily on my mind. The case of Ahmed Arbery, and I'm not even sure I'm pronouncing his name right, but this was a young Black man that was killed in Georgia. There are no charges. Video was released of his killing. What words can convey the rage that thunders beneath my skin? It pulses daily as another Black man has failed. We don't register as human on their scale. We don't hurt or cry. We just do drive-bys. So many instances we cannot count. So much pain I could do without. Punks who have told me, being Black, yeah, that's your shtick. How do you respond to that shit? Black women in power who say it's just another Black man killed. That's not news. Are you for real? Black superiors you rush to for support, smiling up at massa with no retort. Then they throw up Black on Black crime like gang signs and question you like you had a pistol. It's no wonder we turn to chronic and our condition is the same. As a Black boy's mother, you hope they never say his name. While you ask God of all, why are we always the oppressed? And the silence is like that of a good white friend. So I know I'm coming out the gate with, but that's how it's just, it's so raw right now. I'll let you guys speak.
No, you're welcome. You're welcome to feel that like that. I've seen that story in bits and pieces, and it's incredibly enraging at the injustice of it because yet again, another Black man has been shot, and the consequences are not severe enough, and the outrage is really not even severe enough. And so I hear you, and I feel that, and I'm sorry that happens in our country because it's wrong. And so, you know, the space is held for you to feel that way.
I just want to say, I love
beautiful
hearing.
and moving.
Amir, go ahead.
Go ahead, Amir.
I was going to say, thanks, Cindy. That was beautiful and moving, and absolutely, it's 100% valid. And you know, without strong, clear, peaceful voices, you know, things don't move. And I think that's was quite well illustrated by the civil rights movement in its day. And yeah, I bow deeply to that sentiment, to that beautiful passage in the name of that innocent young man and his family. So that's a beautiful thing what you've done, and it's a powerful expression of your emotions. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, I just wanted to echo what Ash and Amir already said, and I really love how well it's so raw and deep, and I feel that I can feel like your words in my soul, and I really appreciate that because I think it's really important to have that like empathetic level in poetry, and so I really love that poem. Thank you.
Absolutely. Does anyone want to go? Anyone next?
I can go ahead and share next if that's okay.
No, that'd be great. And a quick shout out, our aunt is watching. So hi, Aunt Margie.
Oh.
Shout out to you.
So I'm going to read a piece of like flash fiction, lyrical essay, and that's what I'll say before I get started. Well, I also do a lot of environmental writing, so that kind of reflects this. This is called Dust to Dust. The government sent a letter to my home, which I opened with care, slipping my fingernail in between the flap and the envelope, cutting through the glue. I gasped and dropped the letter into my perfectly green lawn. My family lives in New Mexico. My parents and their parents have been desert people, our skin weathered with sand and sun. The letter told me to turn off my sprinklers because we are soon to run out of water. I sit down in the lush grass and look at my neighbors' houses, each of them covered in the colors of desert dust. The plants they have chosen to adorn their lawns are dry and cracking. Water belongs to the earth. I own this earth. I have paid my bills sitting at the glass-top dining table and tapping my keyboard with intention while watching the news. Time is running out, the anchor says. We need to act before circumstances become too dire. I laugh, and at first I'm not sure why I'm laughing, but then I see the arid sky out of my front window, and my laughter turns maniacal, a deep guttural response. Water hits the window, the droplets racing down delicately, trying to make their way to the ground before the dust sucks them out. I must conserve my water now, because the government has rationed it to me. When I called the government from the chaise lounge in my marble-tiled foyer, they did not offer me assistance. My grass is dying, and I demand for this inhumane water ban to be lifted, I said. Ma'am, we are asking that you proportion your water ration to focus on the necessities. For drinking, for showering, for cooking. The grass died months ago. When I walk outside, the land disintegrates into a fine powder under my feet. Sometimes I open my front door and try to recall how my front yard looked when the life grew up from the earth and waved to me. My neighbors have vacated their homes. Dust covers all. I stand in my kitchen without any lights, and I run my hand over the granite countertops, cool and smooth from the darkness of the house. In this time that I've been waiting, I often sleep on the counter. I turn on the faucet, and nothing comes out. I walk outside, succumbing to the heat, limbs slowly turning to dust. My body chokes, trying to remember how water flowed down my esophagus or rushed over my skin. Thank you.
That's fantastic. The line that sticks out to me is time is running out, Anger says. You've like personified it. And there's a sense of like justice that it's demanding, right? Or commanding in the space. And I can feel that. The imagery is interesting because it's almost as if you're in participation with the personification of the elements that you bring up. And I have a deep appreciation for that because we're in a time, especially with this COVID-19 stuff, we're in a time right now where this is part of the discussion. Like, how are we tending to the earth? So really, yeah, I'm digging on it.
Thank you.
What was your space? What was your, like, when you wrote it, where were you? What was your day like that day?
So I wrote this in response to a novel I had read for a literature class, actually. It was called The Water Knife by Paolo Bacigalupi, I think is the author's name. And it's very like young adult sci-fi-y, but it's about it kind of predicts a future in which there are wars for water and people like selling and buying water on like black markets. And then I thought, what would it be like if I was a person who lived in this space, but I refused to give up my lifestyle? And it, like, the earth waits for no one. It's not going to wait for you to get together whatever you need to get together. It's just coming. And it's part of a collection, a short, small collection of flash fiction pieces I kind of all wrote in response to this class. One of them actually just got accepted into a journal, which I'm excited about. But
Awesome.
This was one of the other ones that kind of that same idea where you can act or not act, but no matter what you do, like, we're going to be overtaken by the elements at some point.
Huh, yeah, it's worth thinking about, for sure.
Well, I love the imagery, as said. You have so many instances where you can feel what you're saying. We're desert people with leathery skin, and the walking outside, and the grass disintegrating into dust. It's just beautiful language. You're very gifted.
Kicking ass, cuz.
Thank you, Cindy. I really appreciate that. Sorry if you keep seeing my hand. My like mute button is right next to where my camera is. So I think
It's fine. I think everything's a little flashy and technically glitchy, and whatever. It's fine. I think we just kind of keep going with it. So,
Yes, I just want to contribute that the issue of water, I think, is going to be the most critical issue, actually, that arises over the next decade. And, nobody knows the hour or the day, but I feel like it's just going to be a steep ascent, the importance and the value of water, actually clean, especially clean, structured water. I start to research water actually more and more these days, and I recognize, I work in kind of health. I teach yoga, and I have a private consultancy doing yoga therapy, and I work with people, and one of the first things that I say to people when they come to me and they say, what can I do to improve my health? The very first advice before I tell them about yogic science or philosophy or asanas or techniques or meditation or anything like this is just to increase their hydration. It's just to increase their intake of clean water, structured water if possible, and hydrogenated water if possible. And I recognize, and I've witnessed many times with my own eyes that just hydrating your body properly and staying hydrated for a sustained period is absolutely one of the best things that you can possibly do to improve and enhance your health from wherever it is, however well you are, that you can almost certainly enhance and improve the kind of functions and faculties of your body, and the mood, and all sorts of things, the digestive system, the system of elimination, all these kind of very important faculties just by hydrating properly and paying attention to water. And I will just say that the last thing that I watched that made me cry was like an appeal for this charity that has the mission to provide clean water to everyone on Earth. And maybe I'll send Ash a link and she can link it in the notes somewhere. But wow, it was just so powerful and so poignant. So
You're so right. I mean,
so
we're like 70% water ourselves. So as the earth, so the body, right?
Exactly. Yeah, it was beautiful. And I don't say more, but I just say thanks for this. Thanks for this very strong transmission of how important it is to remember not to forget the medicine of water. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Sid.
Beautiful.
Amir, you're up. Ooh. You want to go?
Yes, I do. And I realized when I was preparing the options for today's reading that I was actually scheduled to publish after many moons a manuscript of my poetry, and I took some counsel, and I recognized that it's not so wise to publish all of your poetry online or anywhere else actually before you publish it yourself. So I am going to read some poems that are important to me of my own, and then I am going to read passages which are also extremely important to me in my own kind of inspiration. But I will open with a beautiful poem that, well, it's like a collection of 3 short poems, because where I am in my life right now is that I used to write really long-ranging poems, which were more like stories, if you like, just with kind of a very dense, very rich language. And now I have come to another place where I'm really a big fan of haiku poetry, which is this kind of like very short, extremely short poems. And the philosophy is trying to condense as much wisdom as possible into the smallest amount of words. And I thought that might be too short for today's program. So I have chosen short poems that I wrote for my mum, because on my mother's birthday, I would always write a poem for giving birthday, write a poem for my mother, because, I mean, people always celebrate the person on their birthday, but it's actually the mother that does all the work. It's her giving birthday. She has to do so much of the work to deliver you into the world. And so I would always write my mother a poem on giving birthday, which was my birthday, and Mother's Day, oftentimes. And since we're in between the kind of the Mother's Day, the European Mother's Day was last Sunday, and I think the Mother's Day in the States will be on Sunday, if I'm not mistaken. So I thought it would be appropriate to read something that I wrote for my mother. And I don't know, I'll take your counsel. I'm in 2 minds about whether to read them individually as short pieces, or whether to read them as there's 3 paragraphs.
I think you can read them however you want, but just if you've got like 3 poems there, just go for it.
Her smile suspends me in the eternal light of now. She is the embodiment of faith. Her skin is soft as sugar brown eyes. She gazes into me as deep as space, and smiles the most wondrous smile of all time. So fine, her beauty brings a tear to my eye. We enfold each other with wings and enjoy the warming embrace of a moment that never ends. So that is one of the poems. I just thought that was quite sweet. Way to not make it too long. And if you want, I will go to the next one.
Do it.
Yeah. This poem is called Cast Adrift. And it's that feeling when you somehow feel like you've lost contact or lost connection with someone very special, and then suddenly you find yourself back on the back in a good vibration with that person. Cast adrift upon the surface of the deep, shipwrecked, I have landed upon the white sands of your shore. From the desert, I have come to you. Tears fill my eyes as I run to you. Your arms enfold me. Wonderment is here. My body rests in your land. At last, I am here. You smile as I weep. You wait for me to hush. You rock me as I sleep. So that's the end of that short poem. And yeah, I have written many, many poems, but for many moons, that was my favorite one, I have to say, of my own writings. Yeah, I don't know why. It speaks to me. It says a lot about that. Yeah, I don't know what it is. That deep connection that can only kind of come from the mother and child. Okay, so this is the last of my kind of 3 short poems. And this was the last poem that I wrote for my mum before she passed away. And it's called I See You Smiling in My Mind. I see you smiling in my mind, and I smile too, wherever I am. I see you caring about your world, and I remember who you are, and I smile. I hear your voice, and I know it won't be long before we smile together. For integrity is the food you prepare for your guests, and dignity is your dress code. Honesty is your drink, and love is your favorite dish. One nest is where you live, and you are comfortable there. I visit you often in the thought fields, and I am with you as you read this. I am with you as you feel this. I am with you. I am. And that's my poem.
It's really beautiful. We actually had somebody who commented and said that they hope their son does that for them one day. So I think just your story about the fact that you have like this affection for your mom, you know, I'm sure that your mama appreciates it a lot, that you write these little moments for her, acknowledging her role in your, essentially your day, the celebration of your life, but at the same time, the work that she put in to get you here.
Exactly. That's right. Well, I am the youngest of 10 children, and my mother passed away in my arms about 11, 12 years ago. And it was strange that I have such a big family. Like, I have 4 children myself, and all the members of my family have 4 children. So my mother has like a huge tribe, you know, like 40 grandchildren. And yeah, it was just strange that in the moment of you know, a departure, I was the only one who was there, and she was yeah, she was just going to sleep peacefully in my arms, and it was just the most beautiful thing. It completely allowed me to transcend my own fear of death, and this was her kind of final gift to me, like a departing gift. Was to show me that yeah, when the spirit slips away, that I don't believe it's the end. That's my personal belief. But it was such a peaceful moment of, yeah, of blossoming, becoming. I don't know what to say. But yeah, I feel very grateful for all mothers. I just want to say that. Yeah, these poems are written in the spirit of motherhood, actually. You know, and in respect of women. I work primarily with women in my work all my adult life, and I see the grace and the power and the gentle strength of women, and especially mothers. That's my tribute to
Sacred
Mother's
feminine,
Day.
sacred mother, you know?
Absolutely. Divine.
Absolutely.
I loved it. All 3 of them were powerful, but especially like the last one, where you use the words integrity, dignity is her very, very, and it
Thank
just
you.
shows how much you loves your mother. So,
Yeah. Yeah. Every word was true. Like really true.
yeah. I understand that.
Like when you really feel it.
Thank you, Cindy.
Yeah.
And the second one, I just wanted to say, I really love the sense of movement. It just really stood out to me, this like idea of movement and coming together, and like how you were able to articulate that was just amazing. So just wanted to throw that out there. Well,
Thanks, guys. Beautiful.
I guess it's my turn. So I'm gonna read a poem that I wrote probably about 2 weeks into sort of all the movement restrictions I wrote it in March, since it was kind of, what can this be, and kind of taking it a step deeper. So that's where I am going to go. I'm going to go with it. All right, so this one is called Containment. Morning, a rush of air and energy, for only a short breath of freedom and sanity. Trapped in a box of yin-lit colors, mat on the floor, spilled thoughts race from the mind, overflow, and fall they pour. Rooted in the soil of my soul, emerging from memory, rattling through my skin, they tell a savory story of bodies. Drenched in the sweat of love and mindful sacred. Exchange of mental recourse, stripped down, understood, and naked. Inside the closed containment, I discover radical acceptance of the now, for which my bone and blood speak to me of when and where and how. I come to a place, dripping in the moist pressure of radiance, knowing, taking in presence, embracing a new clairvoyance. Integrated sovereignty becomes me, only on my own. No one sees the sound reverberated as it plays from my internal hearing aloud. This under the rising sun, warmth comforts my cultivated being, broken down and shrouded in merciful me. I realized that was one of the ones I wrote while waiting for the train.
I just want to say, Ash, that I'm really working with the theme of sovereignty myself. Yeah, in my own life, in my practice with my students, and yeah, I recognize that this is one of the most valuable kind of concepts and precepts that we can have, you know, about what it is to be authentic, autonomous, self-aware, with self-authority, and yeah, it's a very beautiful thing. That was the word for me that just flew out from all of your passages. But this I think you even said self-integrated sovereignty, which I thought is beautiful. And for me, this is a big theme for me right now. You know, is to be able to, you know, in the storm of thoughts and emotions about everything, I recognize that this kind of sovereignty, even though no man is an island, you know, that no person is an island, that being able to, yeah, hold and maintain onto that kind of sense of sovereignty is critical, vital skill that's required. I don't know how well it's taught in schools, but it's something that we should, something I think that we should all, yeah, consider.
Thanks.
Oh, go ahead, Cindy. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. I was just gonna say it's I like the way you talk about your clairvoyance, and even with your racing thoughts and all the imagery that you provide gives a sense of peace that you found. And that's just my perception. That's how it felt to me. A very, very peaceful, resting place that you found. And I kind of see it on your face, actually.
Thanks.
So,
I think it's definitely a space of like, I mean, this is a time, I mean, I feel like a theme for me for a very long time, for maybe the last many years or whatever, but maybe in the past, say, year and a half, that just sort of kind of keeps coming home is sort of the conscious effort to just be now. And none of us can plan for the future. And so I think that there's an element of just being saturated in right now. And you know, to Amir's point, I think the line you were pointing out was integrated sovereignty becomes me. So it's just kind of that self-reflectiveness of like going in and understanding the self within me right now, in this presence, in this space, in this, because it's all I have, right? There's nothing else. There's no one else. It's me in my little box. And, you know, maybe getting up in the train in the morning, but like, this is it. So for the moment, you know, it's just sort of expanding a sense of awareness into the body, into the mind, into the soul, into the space, something like that. I don't know.
And I just wanted to say, I always love hearing you read, because you read such that the words have so much power, almost like an invocation. And like, when you read, it's like, I can feel that power too. And that is something that I really love about just hearing your words.
Merci. Thanks, guys. Cindy, you're up.
Okay. I wanted to share something the pandemic and just how it has crowded my thoughts. So this one is called The Rush. They rush us to die because they got their piece of the pie. We are the crumbs who mop up, clean up, and fix the mess. But is it safe to go out? Oh, yes. Man your stations while I have my luxury vacations. Tote that bell, push that barge. Oh, is there time for my massage? Open your doors and flood the streets with caution to the wind. Don't worry about the death toll. Ignore the science and please bring out my mink stove. Control yourselves. There is no need to fear. And if you would, please pass me another beer. Oh, I sincerely pray for the American worker as long as he works. We are the United States of self-sufficiency. Wave your flag and clock in, because a day without work is a sin. Yeah, it's just, I've written a few about it, but unfortunately, I'm trying to find a little whimsy in that one, but it's been a dark couple of months.
Bring out that dark comedy, my friend. Bring it out. Because that's about all this time is giving us right now, you know? People need to laugh. People need to, like, laugh at themselves, you know? Maybe in this case, instead of a beer, we'll go with wine. Cheers. Cheers to that.
Cheers, exactly. Whereabouts are you, Cindy? Whereabouts are you in the States?
I'm in Southern Illinois. Yeah, this is my home area where I grew up. It's a beautiful place, but you know.
In Los Angeles.
Are you in where? I'm in Southern Illinois.
Illinois.
Yes,
Okay.
Midwest.
Yeah. Cool. Amazing. Yeah, it must be something to be there right now. I mean, everywhere actually right now, but I think, you know, because the States is just so prominent on the world stage, you know, that my children and my nuclear family, they live in United Kingdom, but I've got to tell you that I find myself watching. I'm not really watching TV. I don't have any TV. But if I try to catch up on news, normally I don't know why, but I end up watching the American news, because for somehow that seems like it's like it's a bit like Hollywood. It's a bit like the kind of full spectrum of of what's happening everywhere else. It's all happening there. And for everywhere else, it's just kind of a standard thing. But in the States, it's like a huge thing, because you have such a huge population. There's so much kind of there's so much polarization in the politics. I mean, it's like it's literally like a Hollywood movie. I think. And I really appreciate that kind of light-hearted kind of that kind of seriously light-hearted look at that issue. I think it's important. Yeah, thank you for that.
Yeah, I second that. That's, you know, I admire Cindy and Sydney both for, you know, riding the wave of like insanity where the great insanity seems to exist. And you know, you said a line in your poem that was really interesting. You talked about the fact that working so hard is a sin, and having grown up in the Midwest, a couple of states over actually, in Ohio and Colorado, like it's, you know, that is the mentality. That's completely the mentality. Like being home from work, what? No, we don't do that. You pull yourself up by your damn bootstraps. So, you know, it's almost a comic relief sometimes, I think, for me, in spite of its I don't know, pure sadness on a certain level.
Yeah, I liked hearing that. And being in Georgia, everything is like opening back up, so that's just like a whole other like can of worms. But I think there's so much good criticism that always comes through humor, because I think you get people to think about things and you can make them laugh. And so I really liked that. I was like chuckling along to those, and it was such good like rhythm, and I don't know, I really liked it.
I am feeling kind of like a little bit inspired actually to write something about this issue, but I think my own emotions around it right now are still too polarized. It might be like too schizophrenic I mean, maybe that won't be such a bad thing, you know, but if I write something now, because I'm having my own personal kind of experience, which is without fear, and which is very harmonic, and which is kind of has a kind of overstanding of the necessity of evolution in all dimensions, including this strange time. But yeah, you know, the actual the play of dark and light might be yeah, I don't know whether it's time for me to comment on that or not. You know, I speak a lot about these things at my presentations, but only from the kind of overview, only from the idea that, you know, the human beings have been adapting, you know, to viruses and bacteria for millennia. I mean, that's you know, the human autoimmune system is absolutely, you know, one of the biggest magic. You know, the endocrine system of the human body is probably the most advanced pharmacy in the known universe, and that left to our own devices, you know, we're going to be fine. We're probably going to be okay. But there's kind of insidious pharmaceutical kind of like tentacles, which are kind of like reaching into this story, make it a little bit challenging for me to find that.
Poetic in it, right? And then your poetic is poetic, right? That's what I love about it, is the poetic is this aspect of painting words, right? And so whatever you're feeling around it, there's your rules, right? So when it comes to poetry in that sense. And so it's the story you're feeling, or it's the way that you're experiencing, right? And so, you know, Cindy, you've definitely expressed some strong emotions, and you're right to. You're right to. You felt and read and said and whatever. But I think that goes for any of us, right? It's just a matter of expression. And so we have to choose to find ways to express that. I think the poetic is sometimes the strongest way to do so in words.
Sometimes that is the art.
Mm. Mm. Sandy, you want to go?
Yeah, so I'm going to read two poems that are both relatively short, but they kind of go together because they're both related to films. And so this first one is called Pre-Quarantine. Someone called to see what I was doing. I hadn't left my apartment in days, my eyes devouring the screen. My first meal. Argento, nourish me please, I asked. He pulled me through the painting. Stendhal syndrome. Third film of the day, third symphony of color, third head of madness. Is that better? He asked. I didn't know what to say. Am I better? Am I dipping further? The phone still rang. Hello? Should I come over? I don't know. Am I stuck in madness? The woman in the film doesn't know what's real, nor do I. It had been 5 nights since my body numbed, air around me vacant. And then the second one is called Disappearing Blonde. Lux Lisbon's blonde hair whips in the wind, and I wish I was sitting next to her in the car, smiling at her for the fake ending. It ended abruptly, cut to black, cut to her in the car in the garage, cigarette still lit against the noxious gases. Cut to me in my teenage bedroom wondering if a kiss would make her happy. She gave me the movie fantasy of the happy ending I wanted for her. I wish I could ask her why, ask her what she thought about she was doing, ask her if there was really no escape, but my efforts were futile because I can't talk to a character in my TV screen, because Lux Lisbon doesn't exist, because she is Kirsten Dunst in 1999. I wonder if the soul of her knows she was my first love, that I have memorized her story for safekeeping, that I tenderly share the knowledge of it with friends, but only if they are deserving. I wonder what it would be like if I had blonde hair, if I went through her tragedy, if I had my last smoke in the family garage. That's the two of them. So the first one, I wrote after I spent a week watching only Dario Argento films. And so I wrote that one after, there was a day where I watched 3, and the third one was Stendhal Syndrome. So I wrote that after that. And then The Virgin Suicides has been one of my favorite films since high school. And so I recently watched it again, and then this all kind of came back up. Also, yeah, and these are both related loosely to an essay I've written in different ways, but yeah.
I think that's really, yeah, I'm processing it, I'm chewing it. I mean, I also know, like, so, you know, some of the writing that you've been doing lately, and so where your head is and where your heart is, and it's sort of this unpacking that you're doing in the space that I find really fascinating. I think I may have commented that to you, I think earlier, in just in a note to you, but you know, it's a good space to be, because it's, in a way, like, you're writing the spaces that you're uncomfortable, and that you're moving into, like, a greater understanding of self, and that's what we do, that's what we're meant to do. And so the world around you, you know, everything that you are a participant of becomes you, right? Because it's all connected. That's kind of the impression I sort of glean from your read.
Yeah, I've really found recently that a lot of these things I've loved when I was younger, and even now as I'm kind of going through this unpacking, and I've been doing so much writing in the past 2 years, 3 years, that all of these kind of things that I like, these things like other pieces of media I consume, somehow become part of me. It's like you are what you eat, but you are what you read and what you watch and what you listen to. And so it all ends up kind of in my psyche somewhere.
Yeah, yeah.
I love your explanations are just as poetic as the poems. You are what you eat, but what you read and see, and yeah. And you just have a great grasp of imagery. Like, I can see everything that you're saying so clearly. Yeah, that's something within itself. That's huge.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate that.
This is interesting for me because I don't know this character. I don't know who these characters are. I don't really understand that narrative personally, but I see the influence it has on you, and the way in which it inspires and drives you to relate and communicate. And I see that there is yeah, there's a deep river there of meaning for you, and it doesn't matter actually that I don't understand the meaning or the context or the characters or the things, and this is not so important. It's like, you know, when you look at a painting, you don't know the author, you don't have to know what was driving the inspiration, but you still feel the transmission of what lays behind, and I sense that there's a lot of meaning, and I like this. I like this not understanding sometimes. You know, I am often, because I travel so much around the world, I am often in places where I am listening to people speaking in their own language all the time, and I don't understand what they say, but I see what the expression is when they speak, and it's quite a beautiful thing to actually listen and watch, and to try to feel rather than to understand intellectually what the exchange is about. And yeah, I felt that's what was happening just then, and it was very nice. I'm grateful for that. Can I just ask if it's okay if I take a little comfort break? Because I've been drinking gallons of water. I mean, I'm in Spain, and it's like 28 degrees every day. I'm drinking a lot of water, but I really feel like I must take a comfort break now. If that's okay for everyone, I'll be swift.
Yeah, I'll step in and I'll read the next thing. So just if you need to, like, you know, eat or whatever and go do a thing, it's fine, and we'll be ready. Okay, cool. Okay, so I'm going to read, this one's a little bit older, but I felt like it would be worth reading because it's called Oxygen. And, you know, it's personifying, I think, relationship in a certain way. So I'm just going to go for that. All right, so oxygen. The oxygen in my lungs grasps to hang on for its release. Taking it in, breathing it out before it's cut off. And my soul bleeds in the sorrow of losing your love, your profound love. It was there, no mistaken. My heart knows it's true. It was vulnerable and brave. It becomes, and it came from the depths of you, the parts most afraid but shaken, into the most real space you've ever known. And I was privileged to see it. It sparked and it peaked for a moment. And then again, I remember your voice on the phone. I remember your eyes, nervous of its raw realness. I remember the moments you said so, crawling into my arms, but then, my darling, you took it away when I doubted in my own fears. You struggled to let it peek through. You demanded belief without evidence. You wrapped it in your own fear, denied your misgivings, asserted power in withholding, striking unkindness in reaction, forgetting all you were and are and could be in exchange for the falsetto of safe, though not safe at all, whispering for an unknown future, listening to ones who wanted you in their grasp, never releasing you to love who you pleased, never releasing you to love how you received, so delicately, so tenderly, so genuinely in my arms. I know my fears felt like I cut down your love, but darling, no, my fears were my own and in no way reflected the denial of you or the realness in the rawness we found in the intimate love we found at the sound of our breathless exchange in the places of change and radiating light. But it is now I feel the air I breathe suffocates without you. My lungs cry for you to resuscitate me into a moment of bliss with you. Once again, take my breath away, sweep me off my feet, come into the silence I keep. Know the creation of divine design. Feel the beat of the music as your hand lifts 1, 2, above my chest. Off to the left, my heart drums to life. Then your heart harmonizes to the melodic pulse of love. 3, 4, breathe. The chills down your spine as I ran my fingers down the line. I hear your soul call my soul. I see you in my dreams, and I know the fire burns in your most vulnerable spaces. Don't be afraid of me. No, I've got you just as you once had me, and there is no place else to go in your mind. I'm in your heart and you're in mine. Own being, for the choosing love is the choosing another as part of your own. It cannot leave, it cannot go, no matter what the world says. The fearful mothers, sisters, friends, the enemies, and their men. There is no higher gauge than this. The oxygen in my lungs knows it's true, because only your name, I take a breathless moment to manifest you. Baby, come home and bring me there too. Yeah.
That's an incredible love. Wow. Yeah. Especially as you equate it to oxygen, but the words that jumped out at me, the falsetto of safe, and always trying to find that safe place within a relationship, being the fear that comes with it, and trying to reassure it's okay, it's all right. And yeah, that's powerful, Ash. That's some powerful love. That's a really incredible love. I love it.
I really liked the ideas of like oxygenated lungs and like being breathless kind of together. And then how like physically that would feel. And I just think it really added to like the ideas in the poem about this love and how you can kind of feel a lot of things at once and it's all like embodied.
Yeah. I mean, that's how it feels, right? Like our DNA records all of that. It records our love, it records pain, it records, like, I've gotten into this idea. There's this Dutch doctor named Dr. Beth who wrote a book called The Body Keeps the Score. And like his entire idea is that our DNA is recording everything. And our DNA can be changed by trauma, by love, by our experiences, to the point where like our molecular levels are different than they were before that thing. And how we come back to self. He's actually a big believer in yoga, because for him, the whole idea is like understanding how to come back to the body, how to come back to the safety of the body, and experiential sensory memory of the body. You know, whether for love or for pain, it's all there anyway. So it's tapping into that. And I think it's been a huge part of my journey. I think even before I knew about him or his work, the journey and the language for it has been its own space.
I know that book actually, and I'm a fan of that author, and I'm also a great fan of Gabor Mate, who speaks so beautifully along the same lines with his book When the Body Says No. But I didn't hear all of that poem. I could hear it like over there, but just hearing the feedback from it, I know that. Yeah, I love the title of it. Maybe you can send it to me, Ash, because I think it's something that I think a lot of these works are things that might, you know, to have the full appreciation might need to be read slowly and to be revisited and to be able to kind of really fully digest the kind of juiciness.
Yeah. Absolutely.
But I like this idea. You know, I like this idea that that love is the oxygen that powers the, you know, the magic of life. I love that idea a lot.
I like that your guys' responses ever have so much like, they're all little, which, I mean, to me, that's a painting, right? Like you see a painting in a gallery, and 3 different people see the painting and see 2 different things. Even if they're similar, there's still kind of a different response because you're all looking through the lens of your own space. And so I kind of like that the reaction has its, you know, diversity in it. So, okay.
Wonderful.
Amir, you're back. It's your turn.
Yes, and I am going to read a poem by another author that one who has really dived as deep, I think, as anybody could go in the realm of self-inquiry, and oftentimes, I mean, his most famous is a poem by Terence McKenna, and I don't know who Terence McKenna is. He is the kind of, he's the kind of person who's quite famous for experimenting with psilocybin and mushrooms and psychedelic drugs and psychedelic substances. Let's call it that. And I'm not a fan of this word drugs, but psychedelic substances, and just completely opening up into that kind of like wider theater of intuitive intelligence, imagination, dream time, whatever we want to call it. And this is a poem called The Fire Flow of Internal Unity by Terence McKenna. Oh, nobly born, listen carefully. You are flowing outwards into the fluid unity of life. The ecstasy of organic fire glows in every cell. The hard, dry, brittle husks of your ego are washing out to the endless sea of creation. Flow with it. Feel the pulse of the sun's heart. Let the red Buddha Amitabha sweep you along. Do not fear the ecstasy. Do not resist the flow. Remember, all the exultant power comes from within. Release your attachments. Recognize the wisdom of your own blood. Trust the tide force pulling you into unity with all living forms. Let your heart burst in love for all life. Let your warm blood gush out into the ocean of all life. Do not be attached to the ecstatic power. It comes from you. Let it flow. Do not try to hold on to your old bodily fears. Let your body merge with the warm flux. Let your roots sink into the warm life body of the Buddha Amir. Float in the rainbow sea. Attain Buddhahood in the realm named exultant love.
Terence McKenna, man. I love him.
It's relevant to today because today is the Scorpio full moon, the Vesak moon, and Buddha was born under the Vesak moon, the Scorpio full moon. He was enlightened under the Scorpio full moon, and he passed away under the Scorpio full moon. So I thought that it had some relevance and some timing associated to this Buddha.
I like the fact that, like, I mean, honestly, the strangest phrase that stuck out to me was organic fire. Now, what fire isn't? Because, but it's like the power of something that Earth produces on its own. And then going into Buddhahood, right? Like that small word, just this idea of like attaining a particular space for which we can all become within our own sort of self exploration. Yeah, I have a real appreciation for that imagery that he sort of rolls out. Yeah, Terence McKenna's fascinating. His teachings are fascinating. Up into him is his like chill step teachings. Somebody had too much time on their hands, for my benefit. And I really appreciate like listening. He's somebody that I really admire deeply.
Yeah, I like the invitation. I like it that the whole thing is an invitation. Oh, nobly born, listen carefully. And then everything after that is just an invite. Well, it depends on how you phrase it, but in this instance, it's an invitation.
well, I'm not familiar with him at all. Um, It's like you were saying earlier, Amir, you can not know the person behind the art, but you can still appreciate the art. You know, there's still a beauty to his words and how the rhythm of the words, even how you read it, you know, uh, it makes you want to go back and reread it, but you know, yeah. So
Yeah,
I have to check out Terrence McKenna, new on my list.
yeah, yeah. His language is very rich and very dense, and he's very free person. He's like a liberated character. He's not constrained by social norms.
Mm.
He's not constrained by expectation or things like that. In fact, I think that he is, you know, a kind of a psychedelic Oscar Wilde.
I think it's
I don't know if it's fair to say that, but he is
some,
also, he is completely, yeah, he's completely free of, and in fact, I think he takes some kind of pleasure in being provocative
I
in a
always
good way.
Terrence
In a
McKenna
good
is
way.
sort of like, so I love, teachers like Alan Watts and Ram Dass and kind of these teachers, but Terrence McKenna always had this little bit of edginess to him that the others didn't, kind of coming up in the 70s era around all of this. And so so Cindy, just for you, he's sort of the plant medicine, what do you call it? The psychedelic, yeah, like Amir said, sort of the psychedelic guy who really believed in it and really believed in its sort of power and ability to sort of come back to self and, both in the physical and the mental. So he to me always had a little bit of edge that some of the others didn't in a way, even in his teachings. And so I definitely dig bringing him in on like this moon cycle and everything. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, he's using the inspiration of the Red Buddha Amitabha, which is interesting for me, beautiful.
Cool. Well, thank you for sharing that. I'm really glad that you did. First of all, Sydney, are you doing okay? And then Cindy, you're...
Oh, yeah, we're just having troubles with our internet, so my brother had to ask me a question, but I think we got it figured out. So.
Cool. All right. Well, Cindy, you're out.
Okay. I wanted to read a couple of things that are on relationship. One is in my self-published book called Enrage, The Voice of a Woman. I believe this is in that. And this is called My Heart. And there's another one, but they're both about relationships. I carry my heart in my purse. It used to be outside my chest, loving everyone who ever said he loved me, but they all sat there with their hands like dogs begging, waiting for a treat, and I only tasted defeat. Now I am dancing a different beat, the Shaka Zulu warrior princess who is light on her feet, sword in hand and heart in my purse. And the other one, it's called Worldly. He was worldly, dashing, and his dreams were as high as the sky. I felt like meat with him, but somewhere within was a needle that kept poking, a needle of worry. He made me feel special and all gooey inside. His love made me melt, and I forgot all else existed. Along the way, I melted into him and forgot all else, even myself. I loved him more than I loved me. No one could convince me it was wrong until I woke up one day and realized my hopes were in disarray. My house was on fire and he could not put out the flames. He was just a fan blowing all the hot air around into a fog. So I couldn't see. I tried to get out, but making up was so good. One smile from him and all was forgiven. And it worked for a time until I found I was only worshiping what I thought he could be. I started looking closer and saw I was the only one giving time and me and money and things. He was off in his world, and I was welcome to come if it was all about him. So there's a combination of things there. Some of my own experiences, but then some of the other things I see within the friend group, you know, and experiencing like yourself. No one could tell you something about a person that you loved and you couldn't see, or then you have the same experience with others. That they have that same love for someone that they can't see any of his. It's all, they're blinded. So yeah. So
No,
it's just
I feel like you ground us, Cindy. I feel like you're like, there's an element where we come back to you and you like ground us back. And I love that, actually. I really love that about poetry. It's just sort of this rawness that exists to like identify like an injustice of heart, right? And we need to be reminded. So I appreciate that. Like, can I ask you just, especially the first one, like what was the space where you were in when you wrote it?
I carry my heart in my purse. I don't know, it just hit me one day that I wasn't gonna let anybody else into that space again. I was gonna carry it around so I could have it for safekeeping, you know? I was like, let me just keep it right here. You know, and it was just an acknowledgement of that. That, you know, I wasn't, nobody else was gonna do that again. I was gonna carry it around.
Can I just say that I think that the power, the real power in any social commentary is when other people get it, like when they can relate, like, oof, oh yeah, I know that feeling. I know what that's about. Do you know what I mean? And it's like, for me, that is what crosses all the bridges. You know, when you can cross the bridge into other people's, it's like a good comedy. Yeah, I love comedy. I'm a really big fan of comedy. And I think that the best comedy is this kind of social commentary. It can be the simplest thing. I'm really quite a fan of Seinfeld, actually, but the stand-up, not the sitcom, but the stand-up. If you watch Seinfeld, and this ability to tell stories, which is it's like a basic, simple social commentary, but it penetrates, and that's what creates the connection between the story and the listeners, because that's what makes us laugh. I think is because we can see ourselves in the story. And we know what it is to trip up. We know what it is to fall in love. We know what it is to rise in love. We know what it is to be betrayed. We know what it is to be all these things. All these things, you know, in the famous words of Khalil Gibran, right? All these things love shall do unto you, so that you should find the shape of your own soul.
So true. So very true. No, I'm with you on that. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I just wanted to echo those words, and I really love that you are able to use so much comedy and humor in your writing. It's very nice.
Yeah, no, I dig that for sure. Cindy, you're up if you want to go.
Yeah, so I'll read another piece of flash fiction that is from that same kind of group of stories that I read from earlier. This one is significantly shorter, but it's called Coyote. The woods, full and dark, moved with the breeze, a living organism, and I watched as the branches waved to me to beckon me forward, to make me better understand that I should enter through the deer path. The archway formed from destruction, but inviting, nonetheless. I seek out my beginning, my formation from this creature that is now a pest that I must fight with nightly in my backyard and my field, who wants to eat what I have domesticated, who feels entitled to all that I own. His yellow eyes blink at me because he knows my history and knows how he has benefited me. He knows that he has created a system of exploitation, that my civilization has displaced him, has eradicated other predators, has allowed him to flourish. We search for each other between the trees, and as I walk, branches scrape my face. I can touch my cheek and feel the small drops of blood starting to run down my face, the stickiness of it. I see his eyes staring at me, seeing in the dark in ways I do not understand. I was given something else, a light encased in cool, dark metal. When he sees my beam of light, he hides from me. I still feel him close, his specter over me, present in this place where other species have disappeared into the ends of the earth, resting in the dirt for someone to dig them up later with a small shovel, brush off the bones, and realize that something happened in this place, something very bad indeed. The coyote is here now. He eats what the wolf used to eat. This is the natural progression. And so this I wrote in response to a different book, and I cannot remember the title of it. Oh, it's Prodigal Summer by Barbara Kingsolver. I was not a huge fan of it, but it did inspire me to write this story. So.
Very cool. I like that you have a storytelling element. It's like, I feel like your poetry and your prose it's a story, right? Which is actually what the first poems were. The first poems were all stories. Stories of the gods, stories of the kings, and right? And so now we sort of modernize it and we sort of take it inward, but like, it's still a story, right? And yeah, the elements of like flash fiction always have kind of this nuance, and it's supposed to, you move through it really quickly with a sense of irony, which I really dig. I really like, appreciate, and grateful for. Down the list. Amir, you look like there might be a lag.
I'm going to wait for Cindy to come.
Oh, okay.
Because
I'm just always like, again, you have really good imagery, and it's about, like, as I just mentioned, the storytelling and the fact that you hone in on what we owe the earth, what we owe, but we are ignoring, you know, and the reminder of the coyote, you know, that this was where he was, this was his, you know. You just, yeah, I'd like to read more of your stuff. It's very, very interesting because you like I said, you hone in on what the price is, the price that we're paying and what we owe, you know, but that homage isn't there anymore. We're just, you know, yeah, we're just kind of running around like crazy people. And for the most part, forgetting what we owe and the price that we're going to pay for not taking care of the earth.
Ain't that the truth?
Thank you.
I have to say that I really respect the way that you're able to draw parallels and to tell stories and express this with this sincerity. And yeah, for me, sincerity is everything actually in any transmission. And I really respect and appreciate that. I don't understand these stories actually. I don't understand the backstory, if you like, to some of the things, because I don't know about that book or the other book. I'm not reading fiction books actually. You know what I mean? Myself personally, because I am a teacher and I'm a mentor, and I'm fascinated pretty much my whole life with one huge subject, which is cosmology and the kind of science of self-awareness and spirituality and physical and spiritual anatomy and so on. So all of my time and attention is focused with these things. And so I am not reading fictional books. And I've questioned myself sometimes, like, about this. But there must be great wisdom in fictional books. There must be great inspiration. There must be equal amount, actually, of truth and imagination in fictional books, if not more. But I am not drawn to them. But I really appreciate when I hear people speak eloquently about anything, because I recognize that truth is truth is truth, and that whether it's factual or fictional, that element of truth will be there.
I think that's the interesting thing about fiction. I at the beginning, I did Off the Wild and Dorian Gray, which is probably one of my top 5 fiction books, and it's the only novel that he ever wrote, and it's because he focused a lot on plays and poetry. And so this particular book, though, was controversial. It would contribute to some of the controversy that would later lead him to being sort of caught in his sexuality of the time, right, late 19th century, and being put in prison. And it's also sort of salacious and rebellious and suggestive and comedic, but it's really about this guy who sort of sells his soul to the devil through a painting. The painting grows old while he gets very young, and sort of the consequences of that, despite the fact that the painting was done by someone who had a thing for him and sort of painted him in almost a poetic form of treating him like a god. This artist who kind of wanted to not be known, that wanted the glory of his work to be loved, and this portrait he did of this guy, Dorian Gray. And so it kind of, the story really sort of goes into this idea of like self-reflection and what we do with ourselves and how we sell our souls and what we'll do for our own sort of polishing, as well as what we'll do to avoid our own sort of soul aging, right? Sort of the depth with the part where we don't have to look at ourselves, the stories we don't really want to tell about ourselves, the things the naughty, terrible things. That was the thing, is Dorian Gray got away with all kinds of shit, things that he shouldn't, he got away with things that you could consider wrong. I mean, they're not wrong, but he just got away with everything. And so I think that the novel, a very short novel, but it's this novel that kind of just deals with self-reflection and sort of the dark comedy of it. It is dark comedy. Like, that's exactly what that is. And so, it's interesting because I think that for me, while I love a lot of nonfiction, there's an element of fiction that I think brings in sometimes the mirror, like it holds up the mirror for us to sort of challenge, who we are.
I appreciate that.
So,
but I'm gonna say that I really like being read to. I recognize now that I love reading, but I really like it when someone reads to me. Like, I'm really a fan of this also. So maybe if I find myself sometime with somebody who likes to read aloud, this could also be great. I like listening to Osho, actually, and Sadhguru and Alan Watts. I like these chill step things as well. And the Philosopher's Mixtape, that's my hot tip for anyone who's watching.
Very nice. Well, would you like to read again, or do you want me to go?
We go for one more round, I think, because I have a time consideration coming up, but I think we have time for one more if everybody's cool with that. I have one last thing that I would save the best to the last.
Okay.
But I think it's you, right, Ash?
Okay, you want me to go ahead and go? Okay, all right, I'll go.
It's you now, right?
We can. I think we just switched it up when you stepped away for a moment, but I'm happy to go back to normal. It doesn't matter to me. I'm good.
Okay.
All right. So I will just, I'll actually just read 2 slightly shorter poems, but I think they're poems that have these are actually ones that I've written both in the past 2 weeks. they're part of my training poems, I guess, when I've got a lot in my mind, kind of taking it in. So this one is called Open Space. Open the space, let out the sun. Dark nights of the soul are still not finished and cannot be undone. This is a process in correlation. Sorry guys, let me go through it again. 3, 2. Open the space and let out the sun. Dark nights of the soul are still not finished and cannot be undone. This is a process in correlation discontent of primary purpose. Slit with a knife, we've been set. To undergo the agony of surgery without perjury of the soul, radiating a high frequency vibrations breaking through our limitations to extract our liberation as the weight of the wound takes toll to lead us into the center and grief of that which becomes desperation's relief at the core of our need, revolutionizing our belief. The sacred soil cultivated in toil by the slaves we wrought, castrating our own power for pride in the hour of a turning tide, coiled with the snake, and then we were bought. Now called forward, commanded toward, justice for all, humbled, arrest us before we deny what we saw. Break the chains, lament, and step into the insane, for the monstrous dement is the surge of the offense exorcised from our systems repent. Now radiance can commence, and we breathe deeper unbent, and unbruised knowing in a cycle of ashes used to knead our relentant hearts into the feed and sprout while we lead the whole into the mess, unbound and reassessed, laid bare and undressed, naked, self-esteemed, and saturated wholeness. Second one. This one's called Rain Mercies. Annihilation, or what was to become, the price I then paid to know intimacy, a woman on the run. Stagnation, of this a heart broken, and movement restored, pumping my veins, words wild, unspoken, liberation, back to self in the rain, radiant mercies with anointed purpose and love acclaimed. So become broken rain, as paid restored mercies call to run unspoken acclaimed. For this is into me see, strengthened vibration as I bleed, and a new creed with the depth. And all of these called up out and into the grief, nothingness, all this, oppression released, darkness deliverance, standing in oneness, embraced shadows in wholeness, annihilation, stagnation, liberation, come again and again and again. There's that.
I'd like to know, like you were saying, where you were when you were writing this. It seems like this is just like part of the, for lack of a better way to say it, the new you, where you've moved into this higher frequency, and so all these other things are not affecting you, and that in fact you're feeling liberated. It's a revolution for you. It's a revolution or evolution of yourself.
I was by the train, so a lot of these poems get started by the train. Now they might get finished when I come back home, but a lot of them get started when I'm waiting for the train, because the train is slower these days. So I might stand there for 10 or 15 minutes before the train shows up, and I'll sit there with my notes pad, and it's just like whatever I'm feeling, I think, first thing in the morning, and it comes and goes, right? Like there's definitely moments of like, there's days where I'm in a funk or where I feel like the grief, but maybe there's a space of evolving into the acceptance of that. I've heard the phrase radical acceptance comes to mind, right? So radical acceptance of my grief, anger, frustration, and then just sort of resigning myself to a place of surrender. I don't know if I'm doing it all right. And I think maybe surrender is just sometimes having a shit day. Sometimes surrender is just being like, you know what? I feel like fuck today. You know what I mean? And like one of my dear friends calls and, you know, maybe shifts the energy or gets me to laugh about something completely skin deep. And that's fine, because that's holy too. And maybe it's just that, like, I think that for me, my spirituality is shifting into this place that, like, when we hold duality in our hands, that is, like, when we hold the yin and the yang, when we hold two spaces of ourselves, like, in a sense, we're sort of stepping into it. So my moments of like darkness and my moments of lightness. I heard a teacher that I love, Alexander Shaya. He's a Lebanese American Christian theologian, and he said, I like the word radiance over the word light. Radiance expresses shadows of like the darkness. So you see, like radiance is you see the light, but you wouldn't be able to see certain things without shades of darkness in it. Something's radiant, right? It's like the shimmer, right? And so I feel like that's what radical acceptance is. It's the radiance of, I don't know, circumstance, maybe. So I'm a lot more contemplative maybe than I'm, well, not that I've never been contemplative, I'm just more expressive about it. Making shit up. I make it up as I go.
I often need to listen to things like many times. You know, I am quite slow. My Ayurvedic body type is kapha. You know, I eat slowly, I speak slowly. You know, I think slowly, I listen slowly. Yeah, I like things to be slow. So, like for me, when I hear things delivered very fast, I appreciate. I can take it in. It's like a wave washing over the moment. But if I really want to be able to drop in between the lines, because I think that's where most of the medicine is in a lot of poetry. It's like the words are leading you into the space in between the lines. And I often need to read things 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 times sometimes. Or I need to read them very slowly before I can actually get the thread of everything, the way that it ties together. But I trust, because I know Ash very well, I trust that all of those kind of phrases and those linguistics are rolling like waves, like raging white horses up against the shore. And I feel that from I feel that when I hear you say it. But you know, in order for me to really comment more, I would probably need to read your poetry slowly myself in my own time, probably in my own space, and to be able to kind of drop in between the lines.
We definitely can trade out. Like I'm happy for us. Like I think in our group or whatever, we can definitely trade out some of the poetry or whatever. But and there'll be the recording. Listen to it again. But yeah, I appreciate that. I get it. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
I like a lot, especially hearing about riding up the train. There is divine and there is something spiritual and all of the mundane things in life. And being able to I just think about like waiting for a train, or I used to type phrases while I waited for the buses in Missoula, and it's just like, this is something I'm doing every day, but to find meaning in some type of like divine acceptance of life in those moments is really powerful.
Yeah, I think that's the thing is it's like, I feel like when people think of like taking a deep breath, in their mind, they're thinking of having to sort of cut time, like schedule their day the way they schedule everything else, right? Whereas you can actually just do that while you're waiting for the train. One of the things, Amir did a podcast with me in the past week, and one of the things that he talked about in the end, and even takes everyone through an exercise where, it's just simple, like just right in the middle of whatever your day is, here's like something you can do in just a couple of minutes and just kind of come back to self. And, so waiting for the train can be that moment every bit as much as anything else is. I mean, yes, the longer practices are wonderful, but like part of the now is just being able to take that 1 minute or that 2 minutes or that 10 minutes, just use it to your advantage, take advantage of it. So, okay. So Amir, do you want to read off maybe the last sort of official poem, and then I'll close this out. I'll wrap this up. Hold on. Amir, you're muted. I don't know if you can unmute. There you go.
Oh, yeah, sorry. Good. Well, then I'll repeat. I was just saying that I'm happy to close with this exquisite piece because it's from my it's something called the Vigyan Bhav Tantra, which translates as the Radiant Sutras, and it is my kind of ongoing study of Tantra and the Tantric temple arts. And for me, this is one of the most exquisite of all the Tantric scriptures. It essentially represents a conversation between Lord Shiva and Parvati, his consort or his wife. And in this scripture, Parvati asks Lord Shiva 112 questions about the nature of reality, and he answers her with 112 poems, and each one of the poems is a meditation that draws us deeper into the sense of unity consciousness or oneness, or however we want to say it, like that. But the language is exquisite. That's all I can say. I take no credit, but I'm happy to share it. You who have been seeking, whatever path you are on, a moment will come when divine pulsation grabs you and carries you into its dance. In the midst of ecstatic motion, your body dissolves into light, leaving only the softly glowing benediction of the bones. You become the face of fury, yet serene within it. Eyes fly open in amazement, seeing the unseen vastness. You become a tongue tasting upwards into the nectar of eternity. The soul reveals itself to itself through movement, energy infused, undulations and gestures of hand, foot, spine, face, and form. The invisible loves the visible. I don't hear you. You're still muted, Ash.
Oh, sorry, I'm muted. I said love is divisible. I love that.
Yeah, the invisible loves the visible.
That last line is just like, it is perfect.
This next level, by the way, I gotta tell you, like the whole thing is just like, this meditation, you find the meditation, this one is obviously about movement meditation, but the language is just, it's my current favorite things to read.
Love that. It's good that
to
you're
feel.
favorite too. Yeah, feel it. Feel it. Cool. Well, is there anything, Cindy or Sydney, you want to add? And then I'm going to wrap us here. Okay, all right.
I just wanted to say thank you for bringing this all together, and I love everything that we shared, and because it's rare that you get to just put your sincerity and authentic self like right out there. So awesome. And thanks everybody. I listened to and really, really happy that I get a chance to meet you and hear your art.
See, wonderful. Thanks, guys. I really appreciate everybody's sharings and presence.
Absolutely, absolutely. So I'm going to just practice this quote Walt Whitman once said, "Your very shall be a great poem. You have the richest fluency, not only in its words, but in the silent lines of its lips and face, between the lashes of your eyes, and in every motion and joint of your body." So I just want to encourage everybody who's joined us today to go out and be a poem, right? Let your life be poetry. Everything you do is poetry. And in this space that we all feel confined right? Sometimes the perspectives of justice and injustice, of enlightenment and inclusion, all of those things, the earth and our bodies are all part and very relevant places. And there's nothing wrong with any of it, and experience and feel it. And so I appreciate Cindy and Amir and Cindy joining us poetry and talking about it and nerding out a little bit on it. You guys are amazing, and your poetry is and beautiful and weird. All of that. And so thank you to everyone. We're going to the playback will be available for anybody who wants to go back and hear anything that's in this. And our website, like our sites and links, are in the description. If you want to donate or buy our it's there, so please check those things out and support us. We're all writers. We're doing a myriad of other things in our daily lives, from yoga to teaching to studying, and so on. So I just appreciate everybody who joined us today, and appreciate everybody who stayed and listened to a couple of poems. And so, you know, please know that we are very, very grateful for you and everything. So farewell to Facebook, and we will see you guys hopefully another time, and feel free to drop in your comments on what you liked and what you think, and we'll talk all again soon. Cheers.
Cheers.
Okay, I have stopped our live stream. I think. I've stopped our